much for joining me for today's webinar. My name is Susan Storm, and I'm the writer for PsychologyJunkie.com. Being a parent is hard work. I have 4 going on 5 children, and I can tell you that some days are wonderful. Some days everything goes according to plan, and everything I say seems to come out right. Homework is a breeze. And I have other days where I feel like I have no clue what I'm doing, and everything is going wrong, even if I have the best of intentions. Can you relate to what I'm talking about? I think probably every parent can at one point or another. So, my goal with this webinar is to give you more of those good days and less of those days where your peace of mind is just trash and everything seems to be just going wrong. My goal is to give you some tools using personality type to have better communication in your family, to avoid conflict, to make homework easier, to make family life more harmonious. I've been learning about personality type for over 10 years, and I'm a certified MBTI practitioner. I've also been studying child psychology for 10 years, and the tips I've learned along the way have helped me to have so much better relationships with my children. And I would love to give these tips to you, and that's what this webinar is all about. To begin, we're going to be talking about the basics of personality type. So if you're new to type, we'll explain to you what all those letters mean in your personality type code. After that, we're going to go over some common pitfalls and struggles that almost every family faces from time to time that have to do with misunderstanding each other's personality types. And the last part of the webinar, we'll talk about some easy, actionable tools and tips that you can use right away today to make communication easier, to make parenting more fun, to help your children feel more understood, and to help you not feel like you're losing your peace of mind. So stick around to the end to get those tips, and also stick around to the very end because I have an exciting announcement for you, and I would really love to share with you. So to begin, let's go ahead and start by talking about the very basics of personality type. In order for us to understand why and how childhood wounding happens, or how to begin healing from that, we have to understand what personality type is. This part of our webinar can help you to clarify your type, and it can also help you to get some hints about your child's personality type. If you're watching this webinar, you've probably heard of the Myers-Briggs personality types, but just in case you're new to personality type, I want to go over the basics of what all those letters mean. This is going to be a relatively brief overview, but I hope it'll still be helpful. First of all, what is personality type anyway? Your personality type describes how you process information, how you make decisions, and how you like to interact with the outside world. The theory of personality type came from the groundbreaking work of Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, who first wrote about type in his book Psychological Types. Maybe you've heard of it. Since then, people like Isabel Briggs-Myers, John Beebe, and other psychologists have made psychological type applicable and beneficial for children and adults alike. Personality indicators like the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator are used by 80% of the Fortune 100 companies to build stronger, more effective teams and healthier organizations. Personality indicators are also used by educators, college advisors, and psychologists to help people understand their strengths and reach their potential more fully.
So now let's figure out what all those letters mean in your personality type code. Before I get into the letters, I want to go over one basic rule of type theory. I'm going to be talking about 8 preferences here, but I just want you to keep in mind that you use all 8 of those preferences. You might type as an extrovert, but you still have moments of introversion. You might type as a thinking type, but you still have moments where you use feeling. I like to think of this in terms of writing. We all have a preferred hand to write with, but that doesn't mean we never use the other hand. If you're right-handed and you suddenly try to switch to writing with your left hand, you could definitely do it. But it would take a lot more time and it would look a lot more sloppy. In the same way, you can access extroversion and introversion, sensing and intuition, thinking and feeling, judging and perceiving. All these preferences we're going to talk about. But only 4 will be more natural to you. The other 4 will take a lot more work and can cause you more stress. So as I'm reading the descriptions for these preferences, keep in mind that you use them all, but there will be 4 that you or your child uses more naturally. So now we can really get started. Let's start with the E or I preference. Do you focus on the outer world of activity, people, objects, and interactions? If so, you have a preference for extroversion. If you're an extrovert, your personality type code will begin with an E. For example, ESTJ. Now, contrary to popular belief, extroversion does not mean that you need to constantly be around people or that you're loud, super confident, or an attention seeker. I mean, you can be those things as an extrovert, but you can also be those things as an introvert. An extrovert will simply prefer to focus on the outer world and be engaged in activities that involve direct interaction with people, objects, and the environment. Their energy flows outwards towards the environment, and they like to stay interactive with that. So if your child seems to channel energy outwards, they're an extroverted child. You can see this energy flow by how they do things. Do they respond quickly to questions and input? Do they want to touch everything and interact with objects quickly? Are they action-oriented or talkative? An extroverted child will usually speak more quickly, more often, and respond more rapidly to the environment than the introverted child. Now, if you're an introvert, you prefer to focus your attention on the inner world of reflection, thoughts, and ideas. An introvert will need more time to process information before speaking or jumping into action. They will need much more quiet time away from stimulation and interaction with people and objects and activity. The introverted child is more likely to get overstimulated than the extroverted child. Now, just like extroversion has its false stereotypes, so does introversion. Being an introvert doesn't mean that you're automatically shy, reclusive, or you dislike people. Even extroverts can be like that. Those characteristics are not a part of personality type. If you're an introvert, your personality type code will begin with an I. For example, ISTJ. So an introverted child will usually have to process more before responding. They'll be slower to directly engage with the environment. They'll want to observe before interacting, and they'll want to think before speaking. They are generally much more private than extroverted children. Now remember, everyone needs some time with others and some time alone. Even the most extroverted extrovert can get tired of socializing, and even the most introverted introvert can get lonely.
Now let's talk about how you gather information. If you trust the world of hidden meanings and abstract concepts more than the concrete world, you're probably an intuitive type. Intuitives trust their hunches and lean towards theoretical possibilities more than current realities. They're conceptual, future-oriented, and more focused on what could or will be than what is happening right now. Intuitives often speak in a roundabout fashion. They tend to use a lot of metaphor and symbolism in their speech. They gather meanings, symbols, and abstract clues from the world around them, and they try to decide what all this will mean for the future. If you're an intuitive, you'll have an N as the second letter of your type code. For example, ENFP. If you first and foremost trust the concrete world that you can take in through your senses, then you're probably a sensing type. Sensors trust proven facts, tangible realities, and things they can see, smell, touch, taste, and hear. They are usually very detail-oriented and down-to-earth. When they like to speak in a sequential, literal order, and they enjoy topics that have a direct, practical application. They gather sensory data from the world around them, and then they try to decide practically what to do with it and how to use it. If you're a sensing type, you'll have an S as the second letter in your type code. For example, ESFP. Next, let's talk about how you make decisions. When you have an important decision to make, you'll usually choose one of two ways to handle it. Some people try to step out of the situation. From an outside perspective, they can clearly look at the facts, focus on the logic, and remain impersonal and unbiased. From this vantage point, they can focus on pros and cons and maintaining a logical approach that's focused on truth and facts. Is this your preferred method for making decisions? If so, then you're a thinking type. If you're a thinking type, you'll have a T as the third letter of your type code. For example, INTJ. If, when faced with an important decision, you step into the situation to see how it will impact people, how it will make everyone feel, and how the decision will align with your personal or social values, then you're a feeling type. Feeling types focus on empathy, ethics, and harmony when they make a decision. They want to make sure that they're staying aligned with their morals and making a decision that will positively impact people. If you're a feeling type, you'll have an F as the third letter in your type code. For example, INFJ. Now let's focus on the last preference in your personality type, how you interact with the outside world. When interacting with the outer world and your responsibilities, do you prefer to have things decided, planned, and structured? Do you like to get your work done way ahead of schedule? Do you want to finish all your work before you play? Then you're probably a judging type. If you're a judging type, you'll have a J as the fourth letter in your type code. For example, ENTJ. Now, judging doesn't mean judgmental. That's one thing that people get confused about, just to clear that up. Now, when interacting with the outer world, do you prefer to mix work with play, multitask, and stay open for new possibilities as long as possible? Do deadlines stimulate you and cause you to work in a burst of creative energy? Do you like to keep your plans to a minimum so you can be spontaneous and free? If you relate more to this, then you're probably a perceiving type. If you're a perceiving type, you'll have a P as the fourth letter in your type code. For example, ENTP. Now here's some important things to remember about type. No one type is better than another. There isn't a best or worst personality type. Each type has their own unique strengths, weaknesses, and gifts. Also, there's more to you and your child than your type. Your type can tell you how you like to communicate, how you like to take in information and make decisions, but there are so many other factors and ingredients that make up who you are. Your upbringing, environment, and unique tastes and traits make you a completely unique individual. Another thing I want to clear up is that you use all the preferences. You simply prefer for. So if you're a feeling type, you still use thinking sometimes, but you prefer and are more comfortable in the world of feeling. If you're an intuitive type, you still use sensing sometimes, but you're more happy and comfortable in the world of intuition. If you're a perceiving type, you still use a judging preference at times, but you're more happy and comfortable in the perceiving world. Sometimes how we are at home, how we are at work, is altered. We have to kind of alter our personalities to fit in those places. I've known of perceivers who had to work in highly structured, planful, organized environments that just didn't allow them to use their perceiving nature the way they would normally like to. And they were stuck in that situation for so long that they started to feel like, well, maybe I am a judging type. But the more they got to know themselves and who they were naturally, the more they realized this wasn't their actual preference, it was something they had to adapt to. Similarly, you can have thinking types who grow up around feeling types and feel like maybe I need to be more like them. Maybe that's the right way to be, and my way of thinking is the wrong way to be. And this can happen a lot with children growing up in families where the type culture is different from their personality type. If you are a thinking type growing up in a family of feelers, or a feeling type growing up in a family that's predominantly thinking types, you can feel like who you are just is wrong. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about in the next section of this webinar. But before we go there, let's sum up what we've discovered in this section. So extroverts gain energy from interaction with the outside world. Introverts gain energy from pondering and inner thought. Intuitives are focused on the abstract, theoretical, and unseen. Sensors are focused on the concrete, literal, and real details of the world around them and their experience with it. Thinking types step outside of the decision to consider the logic, pros and cons, and truth of a situation. Feeling types step inside a decision to consider how it will impact the people involved, whether harmony will be maintained, and whether the decision aligns with their values. Judging types like to have a schedule and a plan. They like to get all their work done before playing. Perceiving types like to mix work and play and they enjoy having an open-ended, spontaneous lifestyle. They like to stay open for new opportunities and inspiration. So now let's move on to the second part of our webinar. In this part of the webinar, we're going to talk about the common pitfalls of parenting without consideration for personality type. It's so easy to make mistakes as a parent and to misunderstand or miscommunicate with our children. Many of you have probably struggled with feeling misunderstood as a child yourself. If you ever felt growing up that your parents or teachers just didn't get you, or that you were forced into a mold that was uncomfortable and unnatural for you, there's a good chance some of this had to do with your personality type clashing with the types of the people around you. A lot of times this happens with the best of intentions. Most parents want to do what's best for their kids, and they want to appreciate what makes them unique. At the same time, most of us, without even realizing it, think that activities or behaviors that lie in opposition to our natural preferences are wrong or something that nobody could benefit from. Or maybe we think they're a waste of time. We may accidentally send this message to our children. For example, if you're an extroverted parent, maybe you think that your child is too reclusive and too stuck in their head, or too antisocial when they need time alone. Maybe as a way of dealing with this, you try to push them into more social situations, and this causes them stress. You think it's not natural for them to be alone so much or to want so much alone time. As just one of many ways in which we can misunderstand our children when they have different preferences than us. Another example I have, and this is one I've actually dealt with as a practitioner, is say you have an ISFJ mother who really just loves and adores her children and wants to raise them the right way. She raises them with structure, order, and routine. After all, this is what she needed as a child, and this is also what many parenting magazines and books will tell you that children need. Considering roughly 50% of the US population is composed of sensing, judging types who prefer routine and structure, many of the parenting resources you'll find will be geared towards that type of a child. The problem is, one of her children just so happens to be an ENFP. Now, ENFPs dislike structure and they find routine stifling. The more structure and routine that you push onto an ENFP child, the more they'll feel misunderstood, trapped, and perhaps creatively blocked. They get their inspiration during moments of freedom and open-ended exploration. They're inspired by being spontaneous, and they find lots of plans and structure stressful. Knowing what will happen day after day is actually depressing for many ENFP children. As ENFP pushes against the structure that the ISFJ parent has built, conflict naturally arises. The ISFJ mother will be thinking, I'm trying to give you security and comfort, but the ENFP is feeling like, you're trying to trap me and control me. Somewhere along the way, the child starts to either feel that A, their parents just don't understand them, or B, there's something wrong with them, and they need to keep trying to change their natural tendencies. In scenario A, distance can grow in relationships. Kids and parents can stop communicating, or their communications can be stressful. Parents can overexert their efforts to make their child fit their ideal mold because, as far as they know, that's what works and that's what's best. Resentment builds, open communication is stifled, and this can all lead to bitterness and frustration for everyone involved. Hopefully the child still knows, hey, my parents love me, so even though we're getting on each other's nerves, that's the most important thing. But there still might be a feeling of resentment or bitterness or frustration in communication, and that can be a really hard bridge to gap. In scenario B, the child tries to fit in with the type culture of the family. They try to be more like their SJ parents. They try to be more consistent, more scheduled, more regimented, less distracted by new ideas and possibilities. But this causes them stress, anxiety, and a low self-esteem. They live in a regular state of stress, which isn't healthy for them mentally or physically. Now, in this scenario, we're talking about an ISFJ parent and an ENFP child, and that's a very big difference, but this could easily be reversed. You could have an ENFP parent with an ISFJ child, and the ENFP parent is raising their child without the structure and routine that they need. So there's no bad guy in this situation. There's no villain. There's no bad types. Every type is capable of being a wonderful parent. It's just that there are a lot of misunderstandings when there's type differences in the family. So let's talk about type culture in family and schools and how that impacts your children. Every family tends to have a type culture. Some families are very diverse and they just have a mishmash of personalities that all have to try to understand each other. Oftentimes, the parents shape the type culture of the family, especially in the early years. Many times, whoever the stay at home parent is or the most involved parent shapes the type culture of the family. So if you have a stay at home mom who's an ESFJ, many times the culture of the family is an ESFJ culture predominantly. Knowing the personality types of all the members in your family can really help you to understand your type culture and also if there are any children who might be outliers in the family. As an example, I'm going to talk about the Pollitt family. This is a family I worked with and communicated with for a while. The father was an INFJ and the mother was an ESFJ. They had an INTJ son and an ISFP daughter. There was definitely a judging culture in the home as well as a feeling type culture. Their son, an INTJ, he liked the structure and decisiveness of the family, but his thinking preference was not shared by anyone. He felt that he was surrounded by people who all made decisions based on values that he didn't really understand. Why were his logical decisions seen with such scrutiny? Why did he feel so frustrated when everyone wanted to talk about their feelings? Why did he resent how much his parents cared about social niceties that he thought were a waste of time or phony? When he was stressed about things, his parents would come up to him and want to talk to him about his feelings, and that just made him so frustrated because it's the last thing in the world he wanted to do. Couldn't they just give him space? Couldn't they just look at things outside their own value structures and emotions? The daughter in the family, an ISFP, also felt stifled. She used a different type of feeling from her FJ parents. They use a form of extroverted feeling. All FJs use extroverted feeling, and as an FP, she uses introverted feeling. She finds their need to have harmony and to keep up with social values overbearing and phony. She finds the structure of the home confining, and she wants to have more freedom and spontaneity in her life. So as you can see in this family, the son's thinking preference was kind of outside the bounds of the family's type culture. The daughter's perceiving preference and even her feeling preference to a certain degree were outside the bounds of the family's type culture. There wasn't any bad type in the family, but children and parents both tend to misunderstand each other, especially when they have very different type preferences. So when the Pollitts learned about their type culture and the ways in which their children wanted to be heard, what their needs were, and what their communication preferences were, they became so much stronger. They started picking up on their own hidden biases and realizing ways they had stifled their children's natural tendencies. Now, when someone in the family is behaving in a way that doesn't fit with the overall type culture, the family members involved can pause, step back, and consider whether the behavior is really wrong or just the result of a different type preference. The family really committed themselves to working together to understand each other, and their whole family life transformed as a result. So, what's your family type culture? Go ahead and grab a piece of paper, a pencil, a pen, and go ahead and write down the types of the members of your family if you know them. What's your type? Your husband's type? Your children's types? Is there anyone who's an outlier in the family? Is there anyone who has a greater risk of being misunderstood? So let's move on to type culture in schools. Many schools in the US have a type culture. According to numerous case studies in the MBTI manual, anywhere from 49 to 75% of the teachers in most elementary and middle schools have a preference for sensing and judging. Roughly 15 to 20% of the teachers in elementary and middle school have a preference for intuition and judging. Roughly 10 to 15% have a preference for intuition and perceiving, and about 8 to 13% have a preference for sensing and perceiving. Sensing judging types make up the majority of teachers that you will find in today's school. They like structure, routine, clear, explicit, step-by-step instructions. They learn best through repetition, memorization, and hands-on interaction. SJ students are methodical in their work, and they like to repeat processes to make sure they've got the problems mastered. SJs trust tried and true methods and are less interested in learning through abstract concepts. So the majority of teachers, roughly 49 to 75%, are sensing judging SJ types. And this makes sense even in the classroom or in the whole United States population. The majority of people you come across, about 45%, are going to be SJ types. So the next most common set of teaching preferences is the intuitive judging preference. Intuitive judging teachers make up 15 to 20% of the teaching population. Intuitive judging children also like structure, but they don't like routine. They don't want to be told explicitly what to do. They don't like repetition at all, and they hate memorization for the most part. Intuitive judging children like to find their own new and different ways to complete projects. They prefer to have an overarching theme given to them or an end goal, and then they like to kind of figure out their own way to complete the project. Intuitive judging children like to learn through abstract concepts, and this is what will really interest them and keep them loving learning, the learning process. They tend to have a steep learning curve that allows them to keep learning and pursuing new topics. Intuitive perceiving children like an open-ended, flexible classroom. They want discussion, freedom to imagine and explore, and they will get worn out by structure and routine. They tend to dislike memorization, and they like to learn new and different things all the time. They like a lot of variety. ENPs especially like to get up, move around, ask questions, interact, and bounce from idea to random idea to find connections and concepts that tie things together. INPs are usually very independent in their learning. Sensing perceiving children like a flexible, action-packed classroom. They want to get up and move, explore, work with their hands, and find the real physical application to the concepts they're learning. They need a diverse set of subjects, and they need to know the real-world application for what they're learning. Sitting still at a desk will drive SP children crazy. They dislike routine, structure, and abstract learning most of the time. They really excel at practical applied knowledge and creative hands-on projects. Working with manipulatives or working through trial and error is a very effective way for them to love learning and figure out the concepts they're working on. So, sensing, perceiving, and intuitive perceiving children are often the most disadvantaged in the classroom. SPs especially tend to dislike school growing up, and they tend to have the most problems at school. They often feel misunderstood, restless, and bored in school, and the classroom culture can make them lose their love of learning. They tend to get the poorest grades of all the types in school. Is this because they're not smart? Absolutely not. These children have incredible applied knowledge. Many of them grew up to be surgeons, EMTs, doctors, police officers, that they really tend to learn well through action. They tend to be kinesthetic learners. And because the majority of teachers are sensing judging or even intuitive judging types who don't have that same learning style, the type culture in most classrooms is not catered to sensing perceiving children, and so as a result many of them lose their love of learning. So you can see how these misunderstandings of children can happen not only in family life but also in school. Now, if your child's having a tough time in school because they are in a different type culture than what would naturally suit them, you as a parent can really help. You can help them by teaching them in their preferred method when they're home, when you're working on homework. If you've got a sensing, perceiving child, you can know that if you give your child an actionable way to practice the concepts, they'll remember them better and they'll enjoy the learning process better. If you know that your sensing, judging child likes to learn through routine and repetition and structure, then you can really help them in that way. We're going to get into a little bit more of the learning styles in the next section of this webinar. So at home, a child can feel pushed and prodded to fit into the type culture of the family. At school, a child can feel pushed and prodded to conform to the type culture of the classroom. So to make this applicable to you, here are some ways different types can stifle or misunderstand their children. Extroverted parents can cause anxiety and stress to their introverted children by pushing them into social engagements, telling them they need to get out of their head or get out of their room more, and not giving them adequate alone time. The introverted child can feel overwhelmed and depleted constantly because they aren't given enough time to reflect, process, and regain energy. Now, does this mean you should just let your introverted child be a hermit all the time? No, introverted children are going to want social opportunities now and then, but usually the social opportunities that really excite an introverted child are more involved with one-on-one interactions and small intimate gatherings. They usually are going to be less interested in big social events. Introverted parents can cause anxiety and stress for their extroverted children by not giving them enough opportunities to interact with others. They might call them loudmouths or get irritated when they talk too much or when they ask a lot of questions. The extroverted child can feel that there's something wrong with them or that they're a nuisance. Thinking parents can cause frustration to feeling children by giving criticism too directly or tactlessly, or by inadvertently belittling their child's feeling preference. They might mistake the feeling preference for weakness, or they might call their children too sensitive. They might try to push their child to think more like them, be more logical, more black and white, less driven by their subjective or social values. Feeling children can feel that there's something wrong with them or that their parents are mean or condescending. Feeling parents can cause frustration to thinking children by mistaking their impersonal decision making for coldness or mean-spiritedness. They can confuse them by using emotional appeals to persuade them instead of logic and facts. The thinking child can feel like their parent is too emotional, too indirect, and misunderstands their motives. Intuitive parents can cause frustration to sensing children by not focusing on the practical realities of day-to-day living. They may discount their sensing child's need for concrete, specific information. When the intuitive parent gives instruction, they might be too abstract, too vague, or they might skip over too many details. The sensing child can feel ungrounded, lost, or insecure in this environment. Sensing parents can cause frustration for intuitive children by misinterpreting their abstract, imaginative nature as unrealistic or flighty. They may feel that they need to call attention to the intuitive child's lack of attention to detail, their lack of focus on the moment, or their lack of concrete data. In doing this, they might mistakenly sabotage or stifle their intuitive child's ideas and thoughts or make them feel bad about themselves. They might teach their child using their preferred sensing methods instead of tuning into the big picture concepts that really motivate their intuitive child. Judging parents can exasperate their perceiving children. They might think of them as distractible, lazy, unfocused, or undisciplined. They may try to force their perceiving child to be more organized, structured, or more like them. They might be missing the fact that their child comes up with creative ideas at the last minute, works better when stimulated by a rapidly approaching deadline, and is actually broadening their mind when they seem like they're just jumping from one unrelated project to another. Discussion with people, anything like that will help them to enjoy learning more and to help them retain the concepts that they're learning. Perceiving parents can feel irritated with judging children, and they can irritate their children too. They might think that they're too concerned about superfluous details, restrictive plans, and limits. Their casual approach can leave a judging child feeling insecure and uncared for. The judging child might feel that their parent is incompetent or irresponsible, and they may try to organize their parent or take the lead, which only causes misunderstandings and conflict. Now, all this looks like bad news, right? We've talked a lot about the mistakes that happen and things that can go wrong, but there are solutions to all of these problems and misunderstandings. We can work with our children's unique personalities to help them thrive, to help them reach their potential, to help them feel accepted and appreciated for the unique individuals that they are. So that brings us to part 3 of our webinar, what your child needs to thrive. There are so many ways you can connect with your child and affirm their strengths, but we're just going to get into some basics in this module. I go into more details in my course, which we'll talk about later. Here are some basic tips that can help you understand what your child needs depending on their set of preferences. Let's talk about extroverts first. These kids need interaction with the outside world. They're going to talk more than introverts and ask more questions. They need to feel that they're not pestering you or being a nuisance. It's okay to explain to them when you need a break. Believe me, that's fine. If you're an introverted parent or even as an extroverted parent, sometimes you just need a break from the noise. But just be careful not to mock them or criticize them or make them feel bad about asking questions and talking. These children will want more time with other kids also. They need more time to experiment in a hands-on way with their environment and interact with objects and people in their environment directly. Taking extroverted children to the playground, letting them run around in the backyard, having play dates, and being active with them will all make them feel alive. In school, extroverts tend to like group exercises and teamwork. This kind of group activity helps them to stay mentally stimulated and interested in the lessons at hand. They also tend to enjoy working with manipulatives and objects to demonstrate concepts. Because extroverts are focused on the outer world, anything you can do to get them interacting directly with the outer world, whether it's through tools, crafts. Next, let's talk about introverted children. Introverted children need much more time alone than extroverted children. Contrary to stereotypical descriptions, introverts don't want to be alone all the time. It's not like they want to retreat into a dark cave and escape from humanity completely. They do tend to enjoy one or two close friendships, and they'll enjoy occasional small intimate gatherings. But introverted children are less interested in being involved in huge groups of people, big time social engagements that might involve a lot of small talk or just interacting with a lot of people they really hardly know. It's important not to push introverted children into too many social engagements because this can tire them out. Giving them quiet time in their room each day, surrounded by their books or creative supplies, can be the bright part of their day. You'll also want to give them time to think things over before they respond to questions. Introverts tend to need more processing time before speaking. In school, they're usually more independent in their learning and will feel frustrated if everything is a group activity. They want time to process information before interacting with a group or responding to a teacher. Now let's talk about sensing children. Sensing children need concrete, specific information when they interact with you in the world. They like instructions that are given in a sequential, step-by-step order. They like stories that start at point A, then go to point B and C, and so on. They tend to get frustrated when people jump around while explaining something, or when instructions are too vague. In fact, sensing children can get confused during homework or school if they're given the main idea, but not told where to begin. If you feel like your sensing child is lost or at a standstill on a project, ask them if they need to know more specifics about where to begin, or if they need more specific information. In communication, sensing children like to know the real-world application of everything you're telling them. They can get easily bored by highly abstract theoretical conversations. They'll be wondering, what does this have to do with anything we need right now? What does this have to do with the current moment? Sensors trust proven facts and evidence and what they can take in through their senses. This makes them very realistic and down to earth. As a result, sensing children like to be praised for being sensible and realistic. Now let's talk about intuitive children. Intuitive children need to understand the big picture and are less concerned with details. In fact, they'll get frustrated if instructions or information is given with too much of a focus on detail. When working on homework, intuitive children like to be given the main idea of what's needed, or the big picture, and then they'll make their own deductions and figure out the details as they go. Intuitive children tend to dislike routine and repetition. They'll be more motivated to master something if they know they can do something new once they're done. New and novel information is always more fascinating to the intuitive than something that's already been discovered or learned. In communication, intuitives need to be able to have abstract, imaginative conversations that aren't always grounded in practical reality. They are less focused on what they can see, touch, taste, smell, and are more focused on abstract concepts and underlying or hidden meanings. Intuitive children tend to get hunches or make intuitive leaps that can be difficult for sensing parents or children to grasp. Even if you're skeptical, give your intuitive child a chance to trust their intuition and see where it leads them, unless that's somewhere dangerous. Next, let's talk about thinking children. Thinking children need to know the truth and reason behind everything. They want to know the criteria and logic behind rules, and they're less motivated or interested in emotional or value-based reasons for things. If you're trying to convince a thinking child to do something, using emotional appeals will seem manipulative to them. They like to know logically why the rule exists or why they should make a particular decision. When communicating with a thinking child, get to the point and be direct and clear. Resist the temptation to lecture for a long time because they hate this. When you praise them, be logical and back up your praise with specifics. Generalized compliments don't mean a whole lot to thinking children. Remember that tact and empathy are learned skills for thinking children, and they may unintentionally hurt the feelings of other people without even meaning to. Try to be understanding and helpfully rephrase insensitive comments so that they know how to communicate with others better in the future. Now let's talk about feeling children. Feeling children need to have harmony and affirmation in their life. They tend to dislike conflict and confrontation, and they have a tendency to take criticism personally. When giving criticism to a feeling child, it's important to do it gently, privately, and to affirm that you still love them and notice their positive qualities. Feeling children are often naturally tactful and empathetic, so they appreciate getting empathy in return. Sarcastic comments at their expense or direct, blunt criticism can be very difficult for them. They learn best when they know how the information they're taking in can impact people in a positive way. They need to have their values and ethics respected. It's important to teach feeling children that conflict and criticism isn't always a bad thing, and sometimes it can help to promote growth and consensus. Teach them that it's not their fault if other people get upset all the time and that they don't have to constantly take care of everyone else's feelings. Feeling children can over empathize and struggle with maintaining their own inner well being if other people are struggling. Give feeling children tips on how to maintain equilibrium even when their friends or family members are in conflict. Let's talk about judging children now. Judging children feel more secure when they can focus on one project at a time, when they know the plan, and when they have closure on decisions. Going with the flow day by day without a real plan or structure is very stressful for judging children. Sensing judging children, SJ types, will enjoy having a consistent routine, and intuitive judging children will just want to know what the plan is, even if it changes from week to week. Judging children will get stressed when a deadline is looming, and they'll usually try to complete projects way ahead of time. They'll usually feel relieved when something is finished, so helping them get through homework early and keep track of tasks can be an encouragement to them. Be patient with judging children when they don't respond well to sudden changes or spontaneity. Try to let them know in advance when something new is going to happen or a big change is about to take place. Give them time to adjust their expectations and outlook, and don't be impatient if they seem stressed or anxious longer than you expect. Judging children can dislike surprises many times, so take this into consideration when planning parties and events. They like to know what's going to happen, and a sudden, unexpected surprise can make them feel anxious. Lastly, let's talk about perceiving children. Perceiving children need freedom, flexibility, and the ability to be spontaneous. Unlike judging types who are stressed by deadlines in the future, perceiving children are stimulated by approaching deadlines and tend to work in creative bursts until they are finished. Often, this is all done at the last minute. Perceiving children like to have multiple projects going on at the same time, and they're usually good at multitasking. They will often have many half-finished projects scattered around their rooms, and they like it this way. It's important to give perceiving children plenty of free, open-ended time that they can do whatever they want with. Don't stress if they don't get started on homework right away. Give them a chance to work according to their energy level. If they don't finish homework on time consistently, then give them reminders and consequences, but at least give them the chance to work in their preferred style. Be aware that a steady routine of the same activities will frustrate and stifle them. If you must have a steady and consistent routine, schedule in free time regularly for them. So, simply following these basic tips will help you tremendously in communication with your child. So let's go ahead and sum up everything we've talked about in the last section of this webinar. Extroverts need social opportunities, conversation, and interaction with people and objects. Introverts need more alone time and the opportunity to think and reflect before responding. Thinking children want you to get to the point, be clear, direct, and logical. They like to discuss pros and cons and cause and effect. Feeling children need affirmation, harmony, sincerity, and they need to know how their decisions will positively impact others or align with their values. Sensors like specific, clear, sequential instruction. They like to know the practical application of what you're telling them. Intuitives like conversing about theoretical, imaginative subjects. They want to know the end goal on a project, but they don't want detailed sequential instructions. Judging children like having a plan. They like knowing what to expect and being prepared. They want to finish all their work before engaging in play. Perceiving children like spontaneity, flexibility, and an open-ended schedule. They like to mix work with play, and that gives them time for inspiration.
Yay, you've made it to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for being part of this with me. Now to the special announcement I was going to tell you about. Would you like to know step by step how to accurately type your child? Would you like to know what stresses them out, what inspires them, how to help them with their homework without pulling out your hair? Would you like to know how to avoid communication battles? Parenting by Personality is a new course I've put together that will walk you through the process of typing your child. The course will give you powerful tips to improve communication, enhance learning experiences, and avoid conflict. I don't know about you, but as an INFJ, I hate conflict, especially when my children are involved. I always want everything to be as harmonious as possible. Having a professional type your child would cost you anywhere from about $150 to $300, and it would only help you with one of your children. What if you have multiple children? You can easily rack up $500 or more just to have someone tell you what their types are. This course will teach you to be the profiler. You can be the one to find out your child's type. And if you have more than one child, you don't have to spend $400 or $500 to figure out their types. As an email subscriber, I'm offering you this course before it's available to the general public. When you pre-order this course, you'll get some extra bonuses free that won't be free in the future. Right now, you can get a complete visual video course on typing your child, plus 15 PDF ebooks that go in depth on the different childhood types and learning styles. Plus, you'll get easy printables that will help you follow along and grasp the concepts that we're teaching. Early bird subscribers like you will also get access to an exclusive Facebook community where I'll be able to answer questions you have. I'll also conduct Facebook Live Q&As to help you with your tough type-related questions. I'll be signing on weekly until the middle of May to guide you through this process and help you get the most out of your child-parent relationship and the course you have. So, as you're going through the course, if you have questions, write them down and communicate with me on Facebook Live. I'll be there every week to answer those questions. The normal price for this whole package is $197, but if you sign up in the next 72 hours, you'll be able to get it for only $97. That's $100 off the normal price, and it's only happening for the next 72 hours. Keep in mind, this course will be dripped to you over the next 6 weeks, with the entire course being available on April 20th. Just click the link shown below to guarantee your place in this course while it lasts. I'll also send you an email with the link to the course so you can sign up at your convenience. If you're not ready to get the course now, I totally understand. This course will be available in April to everyone. But if you want to get this really good price and all the special freebies that go along with it, then I would highly suggest ordering it within the next 3 days to get this early bird special. Again, thank you so much for being part of this workshop with me. It's been a lot of fun going over personality type, and I really hope the tools will be useful in your life every day. Thanks again. I'm really looking forward to seeing you there.